you heard it again with Coach T, and it's strange, isn't? Because you know what you hate. It's funny,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I'm hearing what I want to hear.
Okay.
Do you not hear, for all the humility and deferring?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't he come across as highly confident?
Oh yeah. Listen, there's a difference. There's a difference between being humble and not being confident. A lot of people think not being confident makes you humble, and that's not true. And a lot of people think you can't be humble and be confident. That's not true either, right? You can be both, but it's a very fine line to walk, right? Of not letting, and he talked about this with Sat, where he goes, ego is not part of the equation, right?
I just don't think you can be around Coach Rule.
I don't think you can stay around Coach Rule, because I think if you're not about that life, you get gone pretty quick.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think you would want to stick around. I mean, I've been in places in my life where like I wasn't, maybe in the best place, and I wasn't trying to do the whole like culture, everybody for everybody thing. And I didn't want to be there.
Just keeping it 100 out of the gates, right?
And I didn't want to be there very long.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the like rooting for people
at your own expense.
There's not very many people in my life that I'm about that. Like that I'm like that with, right? It's a real small number, because Ravi likes him some Ravi, right? Like
I get it.
And so, the thing that you brought up that is something I've never understood. Never. Because I just can't imagine.
Okay, I'm
wrapping my mind around the dynamics of that. Because I know because you've told me some things about it, right? You mentioned the Tommy and Brooke thing.
Yeah.
I know that there were people in that locker room that wanted Brooke to start.
Right.
I know there were people in that locker room that wanted Tommy to start.
Right.
You've literally got two factions in the locker room, and it did not matter.
Nope.
That's the craziest thing in the world to me. Like, to have two very separate opinions. And because like anytime you hear about that, it's as part of a conversation of how a season got off the rails. It's like, this group kind of wanted to be with this guy. This other group kind of wanted it to be this guy. And they could never really come together, and the whole thing fell apart. So that's the only time you hear that conversation.
Those personal opinions are fine. That's just human nature. But you know what the non-negotiable is if you're going to be a part of that culture? You have to still maximize. That's
the part to me that is absolutely nuts. Like that might be the rarest thing that you guys accomplished.
It's not magic if it's all you know.
It's not magic, but it is rare.
Maybe
like that's.
I'm sure that there are several businesses, even families, because this is a family dynamic that I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if I'm over at Garden West JCC, and my sister is on her second grant from NASA. I have.
Does she know my uncle?
She actually did get a couple grants from NASA. She's a genius. But anyway,
well, my uncle works at NASA. That's why I was asking.
So I have to, and I know my parents may feel a certain way, and I may joke about her being the golden child or whatever. But I root for her.
Yeah.
Right. Or,
but
let's take my brother, right? Yeah. Who may have wanted to. I don't know if he ever did or not, but to be married or have the family dynamics, and then look at some other people in our household and be like, you know what, I want that, but I'm gonna root for him or her.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm talking about a component, like when you really want the best for somebody, that's usually relegated to family, but the closer you have, the closer the culture is to family, the better typically the business is run, and that even means the infighting. Where you can't say anything about my brother, only I can because I'm his brother.
Yeah,
I can't be over at KB Building Services or Noddle Development or Mutual of Omaha or Lutheran Family Services or wherever else and let other people speak bad about the family outside the family, but internally, like, we can grow each other. That's just like Nebraska. Like,
okay, but let me
the fam. They may be thinking the same things that some of the fan bases are thinking.
Yeah.
some parts of the fan base, oh my God, I can't believe you called the same play on 3rd and 7 where you emptied the backfield and went gun.
I can't believe we went shotgun on 4th and short again.
Coach Rule isn't going to say that to you.
For sure. But listen.
He's going to have that conversation with. So those characteristics
you handle it in-house.
Are still in-house.
So let me I think there's something here though, because I think it's rarer than you think it is in families too.
Maybe.
Like I think.
Oh, I'm sure it wrote. Yeah, you're probably
because
right.
Usually, let me go corporate standpoint on you here, right? Usually, when people are talking about, yeah, we're a family, they use that to excuse toxic behavior.
Okay, so not like Sister Sledge or
no,
okay.
not we. No,
okay.
not that. They use a lot of times in corporate or non-family situations. They use the term, oh, we're a family, to excuse their own toxic behavior, because it's like, oh, we're a family. So, yeah, I'm going to ask you to work 80 hours a week with no extra compensation. Or I'm going to ask you to do X, Y, and Z. That's not part of your job description. Or I'm going to ask you to pick up the slack for somebody we fired because we don't feel like hiring somebody else. Right? Like they use we're a family. You gotta help out here to excuse toxic behavior.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
God, this is from a sports standpoint. Just Friday night, I'm watching the hoops game with one of our assistant coaches, and he had to leave a little bit early because he's got 2 young girls, and his wife's a nurse. So anyway, so he's leaving, and I'm like, hey, Coach Wright, later, whatever. So a couple minutes later, he sends me a tweet from a high school, another high school. So a competitor, in essence.
Yeah.
And he goes, do you think we should do this? And I'll show you the tweet. Here, I can just say, I don't care. Like, so the tweet was, hey, can we help you be developed? And they did like this tweet of all these players going to college. We have to play with or against them and kids, whatever. And I text him back. I go, I want to like and retweet that so bad, but it would look awkward coming from another school.
Sure. Yeah.
And he gives me kind of the question marks, and I'm like, I admire it.
Yeah.
Defend yourself, ride for the brand. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. Like I thought, I was like, hey man, that's the ultimate clapback. And I didn't have the courage. I didn't have the courage to openly like it,
to endorse it.
Even though I'm like, yeah, man, like that's I would do that too.
Here's where it gets tricky, is when people often will ask you to ride for the brand when they're riding for themselves. That's where it gets toxic.
That's where you need to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
You do.
And I tell people all the time, man, stop seeking counsel from the less wise.
And that's where the trust comes in. The problem is a lot of people are not that trustworthy.
The good guy at the club can't be asking the married guy how to operate at the club, and vice versa, right?
And vice versa is certainly true. We'll wrap up hour number 1 coming up next.